the White House versus Walz in Portland. So tensions are obviously spiking on the ground in Minnesota. You've got a bunch of big protests, thousands of people turning out, and a concern about escalation there on the ground. But atop of that, 2 people, guys, were shot by Border Patrol agents yesterday in Portland. Officials there say this was a self-defense, as with the situation in Minnesota. This one against a suspected member of the gang Tren de Aragua. But that is 2 incidents in 1 week, Sean. So I guess my question is, the president, he came back to power in part because of his promise to crack down on immigration. But at this point, is some of this becoming a political liability, do you think?
Yeah, look, I mean, you saw what I said yesterday about the media, and then what you were there for the vice president's comments yesterday, which I think were totally spot on. If you are an average American that's going to work every day, coming home, and all you're doing is seeing or reading the evening news or the morning news or whatever, you would think that ICE is going out targeting innocent civilians on the street corner or at traffic stops, which is clearly not the case. And so for a lot of people, when I turned on the morning shows this morning, I was making my rounds again, nothing changed despite the vice president's stern warnings yesterday about taking down the temperature. And so I think for a lot of Americans, they're hearing, oh my gosh, ICE is out there targeting Americans. And the White House, as much as they're going to stand by the immigration raids and law enforcement, the president has also always been very, very concerned about perception and also the death of innocent folks. And I'm not saying, again, I'm not trying to say that woman, I'm just saying that he is very sensitive to that. And so I can see them having some discussions with ICE saying, guys, you're amazing what you're doing. You're doing your job. You're enforcing it. We got your back. But let's maybe do a little bit more. Let's be a little bit more cautious on how we approach some of these stops. And I just want to be clear my position. When you interfere with a law enforcement operation, in the case of Portland, they were going after a member of Tren de Aragua. So full stop. Like I'm 100% there, but I'm just saying the perception does matter in this world. And we know where the media is going to come down on this. So sometimes you have to tread a little bit more careful.
Yeah, he definitely cares about the coverage and the headlines. Dan, the White House, as we were just talking about, pushed Vance out front on this to sort of take the questions and brief reporters and scold them at times. Between that and what we saw in Minnesota with Governor Tim Walz sort of activating the National Guard, I think he ordered a day of unity and a moment of silence today for the woman who was killed. This is starting to feel a little bit like deja vu from 2024. Do you agree?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, look, I actually thought JD Vance did not have a good day yesterday.
Oh, really?
I thought that at times as he kept going, he almost became angry and was almost kind of screaming at like the country. And I think the big problem for JD Vance and for the White House right now, and we have our own problems. I've criticized Democrats for kind of coming out and immediately knee-jerking to kind of paint these, deceased or the victim in Portland for not recognizing kind of what they did wrong in the situation. Is JD Vance said toward the end of the press conference, when asked about the kind of evidence in the video, quote, was she panicking when she drove into this officer, or was she actually trying to ram him? That's a reasonable conversation, right? So,
well, by the way, can I just go ahead, Dan? I'm sorry.
But my point is, I think the problem that the White House has, and this goes to your point, Sean, about the issue of the political dangers of what's happening for the White House, is they are trying, whenever there's an incident, to immediately politically define it on this kind of high ground of it is domestic terrorism. It is the outrageous coordinated left, kind of trying to destroy America, when you don't know necessarily if the facts support it. So then you get into what Tim Walz is now planting, which is we can't trust the administration, right? They have spoken immediately. Law enforcement spoke and kind of had these, what I'm going to say are political talking points. And so now the public, I think, starts to say, jeepers, what is going on? This is chaos. And that is the danger for Trump, is it looks less like Law and Order and more like just a general you-know-what show. And their numbers on immigration are already started to go down. There's a difference between the country wanting the southern border closed and bad hombres and this.
So I'd say a couple things. One, Daniel, I mean, this is the point I was making on the president's sensitivity to this, totally. that whether or not you're right or not, which I believe they are, when you turn on the television and see what Americans are being fed, which is that ICE is on the attack and this is like, and Portland's erupting and people are going nuts, you have to be politically sensitive to that. That's just a fact, right?
Yeah.
So I think they're seeing that. There is definitely that sense, whether it's right or wrong. Second thing I'd say is, and again, this goes back to, again, part of the media narrative. Tim Pool last night did a really good breakdown of the driver in slow motion and shows you the wheels of the vehicle and where the officer was standing. And it's funny because on first sight, myself included, said, oh my God, the officer stood in front of the car and here's what happened. When you actually break that down frame by frame, the officer's actually off to the other side of the car, not in front of the hood. It's when the driver turns the wheels to the right that it suddenly starts facing the other agent. And it's just fascinating because, again, when you just snap judge, here's what happened, as opposed to, I give Tim Pool and his team a lot of credit. You go frame by frame, you say, what was actually happening? The car gets stuck. She spins her wheels. Then she turns the wheel to the right towards the agent. I'm not saying it's intentional. I'm just saying the original narrative was the officer standing in front of the car. She guns at him or whatever, but she did turn the wheel towards him. And he then was, suddenly up, and you watch him from that back angle get lifted up off the ground and fire. I say all this not to pass judgment, but just that it's not as easy to sort of, as what the first video shows and everybody coming out and saying.
But the problem is there's no nuance in the White House messaging, nor the Democrats' messaging.
See, I disagree with that, Dan, because I actually thought Vance did try to strike a nuanced message, and I thought he was semi-successful in that. I mean,
I actually thought he did a great job.
Like,
I admit my bias on that, but I thought he was very calm, collective.
See, he was
this
to
is
start.
what he didn't do. He didn't call her a domestic terrorist. He said, like, at least once, a couple times, that he can't say what was in her heart. Did she have an intention to kill, etc.? Like, he talked about her, I don't want to say being a victim, but almost like this sort of brainwashing of that, he feels is going on with some people who are average Americans, who's a mother with 3 kids. Like, how does this happen? Like that somebody thinks it's okay to try to obstruct law enforcement. I thought he was pissed at the media, but I guess we're just used to that. So kind of just,
but he actually didn't go as far. I mean, like, he could have gone a lot harder on the media, and he didn't. He just said,
yeah, I didn't think he was that. I really didn't think he was
that. To me, I thought this was JD Vance auditioning for one audience, and it reminded me, like, in my opinion, he has had a bad couple of months. When I agree with you, he started calm, but by the end of that, he was practically screaming. And I think average people,
you know what I think yesterday was? It was an exact reflection of how the country is now. I think JD did a great job. I think Dan. No, but I mean, like,
I totally get what you're saying. Yeah,
he didn't. I can say this with like a total straight. Like, I thought his pitch was excellent. I thought to be honest with you, if he wanted to appease Trump, he would have gone on a lot harder about the media.
I agree with Sean.
This was not an audience of one. That was JD from the heart talking about how he feels. But I'll just lastly say this. This is where the country is. You're on the right. Whatever they say is good. Whatever they say is bad is on the left. But I think, to your point, Dan, where it matters is that middle ground on every issue. Does the person that's not drawing a line in the sand every day of the week say that they like that or they didn't? I think that again, if there was a scale of 1 to 10, and 10 being like the president was right, she was a domestic terrorist, and the media sucked, that would have been a 10. He was pitch perfect yesterday. And I think for a lot of Americans out there, they say, you know what? He was the one guy that wasn't Kristi Noem saying domestic terrorism, or Jacob Fry, the mayor of Minneapolis, saying, F ICE and go home. I actually thought pitch perfect yesterday.
I agree that I think he could have been way harder. And I genuinely felt an appeal to journalists in that room in terms of the coverage. But I digress. The polls will tell us very soon, right?